On today's show, 3 possible trade down targets for the Houston Rockets in the 2024 NBA draft. Kel'el Ware, Cody Williams, and Dalton Knecht. Which player would be the best target to see the Houston Rockets trade down for? It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Just go comment, go Rockets on the YouTube video. It helps us out a ton. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for being an everydayer. And joining us now is your weekly co-host, NBA draft enthusiast, and diehard Houston Rockets fan, Madison Moore. You can track down on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Here because there's so, it feels like little draft information coming out of the Rockets camp as to what they're ultimately going to wind up doing with this number 3 overall pick. We've heard rumors that they're content to stay at number 3 and just draft somebody there. We've heard that they're trying to trade out of the draft completely. We've also heard that they're willing to trade down with certain teams like potentially the Portland Trail Blazers or the Memphis Grizzlies. So in today's episode, we're going to explore 3 possible trade down candidates for the Houston Rockets to consider if they are able to find a potential trade partner. Again, we've done hypotheticals here on the show about with the Blazers or with the Chicago Bulls, or more recently, the Memphis Grizzlies as potential teams that the Rockets could trade back in this year's draft with to recoup either a win now player or a future asset, while also still being able to draft another young, enticing prospect. So we've got 3 names teed up for you here today to discuss. And the first name is maybe my favorite name on the list, Madison, and he's kind of one of those names that's circulating around. I feel like draft Twitter, there's a lot of guys that are really high on this guy, and that is actually Kel'el Ware, coming out of Indiana, a guy that has a lot of the same kind of upside ceiling potential as a guy like Alex Sarr at the top of this draft, right? Kind of a versatile big man, the modern day NBA big man. Just some real questions about his motor, his drive, his desire, some of those intangible questions that have maybe, hurt his draft stock here a little bit as we approach the NBA draft.
Yeah, man. Kel'el Ware, I think, is an excellent prospect. And like you said, there are some questions. And I believe he's become a fan favorite in draft circles because of the upside he's flashed. Not many players, not just in this draft, but in, many drafts have the measurables. This guy's a 7 foot plus center with a 7'4.5" wingspan. This guy's rangy. He can make a lot of plays defensively and offensively because of it. And his offensive flashes are just off the roof, right? And I think that really what makes him a very flashy prospect. You can see a lot of upside in the way he finishes plays, whether it be out of the dunker spot, as a lob threat. And not only that, as he stretches the floor, he shot 42% from 3 last year, albeit on low attempts. But you can see a real future as a modern day 5 in this league with Kel'el Ware. But like you were alluding to, there's a real big question mark about his motor, which really came out of the Oregon camp, right? So the coach at Oregon, where he spent his freshman year of college before he moved to Indiana, really, in press conferences spoke poorly about Kel'el Ware. And, you have those situations, and that happens to certain players. And now he got to Indiana, and those kind of reports cooled a lot, but still on film, although I think he had really good effort at times, you can see times where I don't know if it was an effort thing, but maybe it was a processing thing. Maybe it was just him trying to understand what's going on in the game and not getting back into the play and not playing with enough physicality at times defensively. A guy with that measurables and with his athletic profile, you expect him to make some just crazy highlight plays, right? That's why you want to draft him. And there just wasn't enough of those type of plays on film, although the stats looked really good.
The stats do look really. You did mention the 3-point shooting, so you shot 42.5% from deep, only on 1.3 attempts per game, though, so not large volume there. So maybe you take that with a little bit of a grain of salt. Averaged just under 16 points per contest, just under 10 rebounds per game. So basically, 16 and 10 is the easiest way to look at it. 2 blocks per game, or 1.9. Again, just under on all these stats, but right there where, you're talking about a guy that just averaged 16, 10, and 2, 42.5% from 3. Like, these are some insane numbers. I think it is kind of crazy that the downsides are kind of the knock on his effort, his, whatever, his motor has him all the way back to where you see some mocks where he's all the way down, in the 20s, which is kind of crazy for a guy with this much upside talent. And if the Rockets were to kind of trade down, right, and get a win now asset or a future piece or whatever, this is exactly the type of swing that I would like to see them take where, hey, okay, maybe Ware doesn't pan out, fine. But think about if he could pan out, right, if you pick him up late in the lottery or somewhere later on in the first round, this is the kind of guy that could be kind of that big home run swing where it doesn't hurt you if it doesn't pan out. But man, if he does pan out, it would help the Rockets in a big way. And I think we talked about this the last time we brought up Ware, is if there's one guy that I would trust to be able to iron out this whole like motor issue or effort intensity issue, it's Ime Udoka, right? Like if Ime Udoka can make Rob Williams Time Lord, right, the guy that was oversleeping and running late for Celtics practices and stuff, if he can get him, whipped into shape and showing up on time and giving that top-notch level effort, becoming an all NBA defensive caliber piece to that Celtics team that made a finals run a couple years ago, then I would love to see what he could do with Ware. Now, I know you've got some comps teed up for us, Madison. Hit us with what you got as far as how you see Kel'el Ware kind of panning out.
Okay, I got a couple of quick comps with low, median, and high. First, we'll start with the low. And so that's if those IQ, or I don't want to say IQ, but those processing issues don't really come through all the way. We're looking at, and the rest of the skills, the shooting doesn't translate in a real way, but he still has that size and, those tools. Then we're looking at somebody like JaVale McGee. I think that's a really good low-end outcome for him. I think that is what people are afraid of when they see the tools, but they're not translating in all the ways that you would hope, right?
Which I'd be scared taking, if you told me, oh, you're getting JaVale McGee at number 3 overall, that's a little bit scary. But if you're trading back and if you're getting other value for, doing that trade, like we had the Memphis Grizzlies hypothetical in here where they could pick up either Marcus Smart or potentially even a Luke Kennard as well as a future top 4 protected first overall pick. Sign me up. If all they get is JaVale McGee, I think that's still a really solid get, even if it's, in the middle of the lottery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I think for a low-end comp, like JaVale McGee played a long time in this league. I think that's actually a very serviceable player as your low-end comp. And so when we move to median, though, he's drawn a lot of these comparisons, and that is the Christian Wood comparison, which I do see hints of that on his film. Although I think he's better than Christian Wood. I think he has more. And when I say hints of that, Christian Wood, to me, plays with a lot of physicality on offense. He bumps guys off his spots. He puts his shoulder into guys, and he scores over the top with nice touch and finishing. I think you see the same type of stuff in Kel'el Ware's game, that he plays with a lot of physicality. He's not afraid to bump guys and go through their chest and finish with finesse over the top. But then when it flips the other way defensively, when he went against some of the biggest, stars like Donovan Clingan and Zach Edey, you could see at times he really struggled with the physicality of those bigs. He often was out of position, not guarding with his chest, and really just outmatched in areas. And you didn't see that physicality shine through in the same ways that you saw it shine through on offense on the defensive end. And so those are the type of things where, like you said, Ime Udoka coming in and identifying those things and really challenging him. I think the coaching staff is going to be very important for his development and his ultimate success. Okay. And lastly, I think his high-end outcome would be a guy like Ralph Sampson, a guy who's long, can defend, who can shoot it a bit, who can kind of do a little bit of everything on the floor, and will be an excellent complement next to Alperen Sengun.
Yeah, that's kind of, I think, the most intriguing thing about a guy like Kel'el Ware, or again, Alex Sarr, if he somehow drops to the Houston Rockets at number 3 overall, is just thinking in a vacuum of, man, how would you be able to pair this guy with the guys that you have currently on the roster, and adding, a 6'11", 7-foot, big man, 4'5" tweener who can play both positions and the thing with Kel'el Ware is his shooting is a lot less theoretical than Alex Sarr's, right? Sarr did not shoot the ball well. Kel'el Ware did shoot the ball well, but on low volume. But either way, you imagine putting either of those two guys next to Alperen and Sengun, you get really excited about the different things that you could achieve and kind of, again, masking some of those areas where maybe there are some shortcomings for Sengun defensively. Not saying he's a bad defender. Again, he shored up a lot of those concerns this past season, but just making sure that you can have a good cohesive team defensive concept around him, around a guy who is a bit of an undersized center. That's just an unfortunate truth that we have to face if Alperen Sengun is the long-term center of this Houston Rockets team. But coming up, we got to get into a couple more names here that we want to talk about. We've got Dalton Knecht as well as Cody Williams. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. With Prize Picks, you could turn $10 into $1,000 in a single game watching your favorite sports this summer. You can make a Prize Picks lineup in as little as 60 seconds. And look, when the NBA Finals are over, the hoops action does not stop on Prize Picks. Women's basketball is just getting started with young stars like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese looking to make names for themselves alongside greats like Breanna Stewart and A'ja Wilson. So if you're thinking about getting into daily fantasy sports, give Prize Picks a chance. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app and use code LOCKEDONNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, now moving on into our second of 3 prospects for the Houston Rockets to consider if they do trade down in this year's NBA draft. And that's Cody Williams out of Colorado, none other than the brother of Jalen Williams, who is currently tearing it up for the OKC Thunder. So if that's already just 1 point in his favor of potentially the Rockets trading down and drafting this kid, it's that if he is even anywhere near the player that his brother is, then that would be a huge outcome for him as an NBA player, I should say.
Yeah, man. Cody Williams, I think you have to note his brother came out in his junior year, so he's coming out early. That right. So if you just look at where they are in their careers, as freshmen, he's a lot ahead of his brother. But nonetheless, you always love that you have an older brother who's a star in the league who can teach you kind of the ins and outs, and he's talked about that on Kevin O'Connor's interview with him. But Cody Williams is a very interesting prospect for the Rockets. Another long, rangy wing. This guy's a 6'8", 6'7", 6'8" guy with a 7'1" wingspan, which is tremendous. This is these big rangy wings that the league is looking for today.
Lengthy, can play the passing lanes, can drape over a defender, all those kinds of things that you want.
Gets blocks, man, the principles of verticality, all those things he'll be able to do long term. Now he is a bit on the skinnier side. He really has to fill out his frame, and that's why I think he won't translate immediately. But this is one of the guys with one of the higher upsides in the draft. He is an excellent slasher. I really like the way he gets in and out of his moves. He finishes with a variety of step throughs, Euro steps. He shields the ball well with his counters and spins, and he finishes with touch, man. He has an in-between game with the midi floater. He even will put you in the post and throw out a jump hook with some real touch on it.
But it's kind of by necessity, so it's like a double-edged sword, right? He's got the touch, he's got the finishing ability around there, but he's not really like an above-the-rim athlete. He's not a guy that's going to go up and punch it, is the thing.
Yeah, I mean, he has some highlight dunks, but the athleticism I don't think is one of his biggest feats. But it's okay. It's okay because he finishes on the margins with that length, with that incredible length, and he moves very well and gets to his spots and finishes with a lot of craft and change of pace and misdirection. So I think he's going to be just fine. He's not going to be the type of guy who you'll see dunking on people every day, but I do think he has the potential to be a force getting downhill, just like he was at that Colorado offense, because one of his weaknesses is he doesn't really create a lot of jump shots. That was his biggest weakness. His creation getting to the basket was excellent, but his creation as a jump shooter was non-existent, didn't take a lot of those jump shots, even though when he got into them, they were decent, they were fine, they looked good, but he didn't make them at a high enough clip. And that goes into why I think his 3-point attempts was so low. He only took catch and shoot threes. And so that is the area of his game he really has to grow if you want to hit his high-end outcomes as a shot creator, as a part of his package.
41.5% from 3-point land, but again, only on 1.7 attempts per game, so not great there. He averaged just under 12 points per contest, 3 boards, about an assist and a half per game. As far as your comps for him, I'm going to be very curious if his brother is actually in your comp list. Give us the spoiler now. Is he there or no?
He is not in the comp list. I think he wins. They have some similarities in the way that they drive, and I hear that they athletically tested similar at the combine. But I don't think they play too similar at the moment. But you can see in some of the drives he's taken some of the craft out of Jalen Williams' game. But let's go ahead and get into these outcomes. I think his low end is a guy like Tony Snell. Another long rangy wing that can kind of do a little bit of everything and plays a specific role, a rotation player off the bench. And so that is a player that, plays in this league, but doesn't do anything
but never gives you anything like not going to be part of your 7-8 best guys of a playoff rotation. If he is, you're probably in trouble. Kind of an innings eater for the regular season, if you will, right? A good 9th or 10th man off the bench.
Exactly. But I don't think that's a likely outcome for him.
Okay.
But let's get into his median outcome. And I think these are always the most likely outcomes. And I'd say Thaddeus Young. I think Thaddeus Young is a really good outcome. I think Thaddeus Young is much stronger than him. But if you look at his brother's genetics, he should be able to fill out very well, in the coming years.
He's going to have to fill out a lot to be like Thad Young, though, because Thad Young is
built. He was skinny though when he came out, right?
I guess I'm thinking older Thad Young, because older Thad Young
built now because he's playing the 4 then.
He's a 3-4. He's a 4 now. Thad Young is a true 4, able to hang with the big bodies. Okay,
right. But the prime Thad Young was a wing. Okay, so
for sure.
So that's where I'm kind of getting from, and I think he can fill out in those ways, but he is really thin. But he plays with physicality like that. I think he goes, he takes it through guys' chests and finishes through them, and that shooting is still a question mark, just like Thad Young. But there's a lot of things you can do with his game, with the defensive versatility, with the length. Those are the ways I think if they hit in a really high way, they can make up for the lack of shooting if he never really brings that shooting around at a real clip. But he probably projects to be a better catch and shoot shooter as well. So, so that is around his median. His high end, I got a couple high ends. So the first high end is Jaden McDaniels. I think that is what the league sees as his upside for Cody Williams. I think it is a really good upside. I think they have similar body types and archetypes. And once he fills out, I think it probably will be closer to Jaden McDaniels. And I think he'll be able to guard up and down the lineup in a very real way and really will be able to get after it on guys. And will also add the 3-point shot and be able to attack off the dribble, attack closeouts in a real way. So I think Jaden McDaniels is like the pie in the sky thing that guys who looking to take him high in the draft think that he can be. And if he really starts to add some more elements to his game and shot creation. He already has the creation, I think, as a slasher. But if he starts to add the mid-range, the shooting off the dribble in a real way, I think there's a lot of Brandon Ingram there. I think it's a lot of Brandon Ingram there. And if that is a high-end outcome, that is a lottery pick, man. That's a guy that's worthy of being taken in the top 5 in this draft. And what you probably can get in the back half of the lottery. So I think that's a really good guy to take a good bet on.
Are you higher on his offensive potential or his defensive potential?
Defense is always about effort and role to me. So to me, I think if he never hits his higher offensive potentials, then he focus all his energy on defense, and he has the tools and the wherewithal to do that. So I think he can really get there.
So the offense is like a bigger question mark, kind of.
Yeah, the offense is right. The offense is a bigger question mark, but it's well within the outcomes for him. He has enough there where you can build off of those games, but it's going to take a lot of development, a lot of strength training. These guys are a lot further behind.
Okay, I'll tell you what, these lengthy wings, though, I mean, you can never have enough of them in today's NBA, and that's another guy that would fit perfectly into an Ime Udoka defensive system where guys are switching constantly 1 through 4, and then we've even seen, when the Rockets aren't running Alperen Sengun out there, right, they like to switch 1 through 5. They like players that are multifaceted. That's a word that they've used a lot in the front office and with the coaching staff. They like guys who could do multiple things, whether that's defensively guarding multiple positions, offensively being capable of doing multiple things, right, being a knockdown spot up three-point shooter, or being a guy that can attack off the catch, or be a slasher, be an off-ball threat. And it sounds like Cody Williams has a chance to be able to do a lot of those things on both sides of the ball incredibly well. So that could be a really sneaky like Ime Udoka pick if the Rockets do trade back into the lower end of the lottery. But we've got one more name coming up for you guys. Dalton Knecht, the sharpshooter out of Tennessee. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free, because LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals that you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive, because LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or the resources for hiring. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you actually write job descriptions. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We're up to our final of 3 potential trade down prospects for the Houston Rockets. And we saved potentially the best for last when you talk about just sheer talent, but also fit and what this Houston Rockets team desperately needs. And Madison, what's the one thing we've been talking about this team needs more than anything else this offseason? Shooting indeed. And I'll tell you what, Dalton Knecht out of Tennessee can absolutely shoot the lights out of the ball. Look, there's been a lot of hype about Reed Sheppard and his ability to shoot the ball, but maybe some concerns about the volume with Reed Sheppard and some of the shot profile, the diet. Tell you what, you can erase any and all of those concerns when it comes to Dalton Knecht, because this guy can shoot it from anywhere on the floor. He shoots on volume, shot just under 40% from 3 on 6.5 attempts per game. There is no question about sample size or volume or anything when it comes to Dalton Knecht. This guy can shoot from a standstill. He can shoot off movement. He can come off DHOs, screens. This dude is an all-around bucket. He is your de facto prototypical tier 1 movement shooter, and that would be a pretty big addition to this Houston Rockets team.
Yeah, man, he is an excellent three-point shooter, and I think he has a case to be the best shooter in this draft. He really has a case by the sheer volume and the different ways that Dalton actually got to his shots, right? He gets them in a variety of ways. You just talked about all the movement shooting, but he shot them off the dribble as well. Dalton, and so, when we compare that to Reed has created a lot. He had a lot of different ways, but he wasn't showcased in the same way that Dalton was. And all the attention was on Dalton Knecht at that Tennessee team. Everybody knew he was shooting that ball, and Dalton was getting it off and producing at a high clip. He averaged, I believe, 21.7 points a game. I mean, this guy is lighting it up as an elite marksman.
It might be a disservice to just be referring to him as a shooter, a marksman, whatever. This dude's just a scorer. He can score the ball. That's the difference. Is he's not just your he's not Garrison Matthews, right? He's not just a guy who's going to come curling off screens and let it rip. That's part of his bag. That's part of his skill set, but he can put the ball on the floor. He can generate his own shot. He can get it going from anywhere on the floor. And when he gets it going, this dude can get scorching hot in a hurry.
Exactly. And like you said, shooting is not the only strength of his offensive game. This guy can really create off the dribble. He has a nice mid-range package that he can leverage off his incredible shooting. And he also is sneaky athletic. He has a lot of dunks on the year, highlight reel dunks. He finishes at the rim. He gets all the way to the basket when he needs to. He has a big, strong body, big NBA-ready body at 6'7". This guy is a huge shooting wing, and he's doing it at a high clip. And really the biggest knock against Dalton It's his age. Like, those are the things that really coming and knocking down his upside. And that's why this guy isn't a consistent number one pick. Because I promise you, if this guy was 19, if he was a freshman or a sophomore, he'd probably be the consistent number one pick, and everybody be talking about him with superstar upside. But because he's an older player, he's viewed with less upside, but I think he's ready to come contribute right away. And also, he's not the greatest defensive player in the world, but he's a serviceable defensive player. I think he will be able to hold up just fine. He won't be a guy that teams are going to be targeting. You know what I mean? So you add that with his incredible offensive package, and you're really like cooking with fire with this type of guy. And I think he's one of the most underrated and under-talked about prospects in this draft, and he really should be talked about more in the top 5, and he'll probably go in the back end of this lottery, just because teams are looking for more upside, and they're going to go with less proven players with more trajectory of becoming those star prospects.
It's so funny to me because I do think that the Rockets are in this position where, a couple of years ago, I would have been a little averse to the idea of taking an older rookie, quote unquote, because I do think there is something to the argument or the belief of, okay, well, he is a little bit older. Is he, already who he is as an NBA player, right? Does he have much more of a ceiling left to attain? Or, how does his skill set convey to the NBA? I don't necessarily worry about that knock on him for the Rockets, because the Rockets are already in a position where they want to start playing winning basketball, right? What's the best way to do that? You've seen teams in the past who draft older rookies, right? Guys who come in as juniors or seniors, they were juniors or seniors in college. You draft them. Those guys are much more polished, NBA ready pieces, NBA ready players than the young, freshman, sophomore that you're taking a chance on. Because, right, Dalton's already grown into his grown man body. Like, he's in his grown man body. Right. He's ready for NBA basketball. He's a really polished player already. There's much less developmental work that I think the Rockets would have to do with Dalton, where of anybody that the Rockets could conceivably draft in this year's draft, I think he has the chance of, more than anybody else, quite possibly, to step in day one potentially. And I'm not saying he'd crack the rotation or anything, but you could throw him out there for a few minutes a night, whatever, and he's not going to kill you, right? He knows what he knows. He knows how to be a serviceable defender. Offensively, he would know his role at the NBA level, likely not doing a lot of the stuff that you're seeing him do at Tennessee as far as his own shot creation and stuff, but being used as a shooter to space the floor, to open things up for other guys on the roster like Jalen Green or Alperen Sengun. I do think from that perspective, it makes a ton of sense for the Rockets. If they did trade back, Dalton Knecht would probably be my pick for this team to make.
Yeah, man. I mean, he fits an immediate need, and it's a lights out shooter, a guy that is serviceable. And we just seen a lights out shooter get off in the playoffs and play a pretty significant role in winning Game 3 in Sam Hauser, which is one of his low end outcomes for me. I think Sam Hauser is the baseline for Dalton Knecht. That's just, you're going to get serviceable, meaningful shooting out of this guy. He's going to move into space well, and he's going to be a serviceable defender. And when you need the floor to be spaced and you need a bit more of a shooting punch, you can depend on Dalton. And I think he has the poise and all the things that he's been through. I think this guy's going to have ice in his veins. I think you're going to be able to trust him to make shots at all times.
And there's no better. And I want to get to your median and high tier outcomes or top end outcomes for Dalton as well. But it's really important to consider here from a roster building perspective. There is no better value in the NBA landscape than getting a club controlled first round draft pick on your roster for 4 years, right? So if the Rockets did take Dalton Knecht as a very close to kind of finished product, not quite finished, but very close to probably what he's going to be as an NBA player, you get that on team control for 4 years when you've got extensions right around the corner potentially for Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Then next summer you got to figure out the futures for Jabari and Tari, and then not long after that you're going to have to figure out Thompson, Cam Whitmore. Having a guy that you can guarantee is going to be a really good, 9th or 10th man at a minimum in your rotation, but also somebody who's capable of playing some of those, select bench minutes or whatever in the playoffs, or just a situational piece that you can have on the floor to space things out, to be a knockdown shooter. That sounds like a really great pickup, especially when you have to consider the financial ramifications of the decisions this team is going to be faced with sooner rather than later with a lot of the contracts for these other young guys that they already have on the roster.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can use movement shooters to create this pseudo gravity and offer these just wrinkles to your offense. And I think he'll be able to do that day one, year two out of the league.
All right, what you got for us for the other comps, for the median and for the high-end comps?
Yeah, so median, I'll go real quick. So the median, I have Kyle Korver and Max Strus. All right, movement shooters that were featured on playoff teams. I like Max Strus a lot. Similar size, can shoot it, can get hot in a hurry, and it's not the best defender in the world, but it's a serviceable one. He can play playoff minutes, and if he's hot, his hot shooting well outweighs, and that's what I kind of envision for Dalton. Not the best defender in the world, but serviceable. Like, you know what I mean? You can live with him on the floor. He's without getting hunted. All right, and last.
Wait, are we going 3 for 3 on white boys here?
Ooh, 4 for 4.
Okay,
there's
all right,
a 5 for 5. All of these people are white. Wow.
Oh my God, he did it! He did it. The moment you said sneaky athletic when you were talking about Dalton, I was like, oh, we're getting all the white boy sharpshooters. It's going down. All right. For high end outcomes, who are the high end white boy shooter outcomes?
Yes, Bojan Bogdanovic. Okay. Yes. I'm sorry, guys.
He's European. He don't count. He's a different kind of white. Anyways.
Okay. All right. Hopefully. but honestly, these people, they play just like him. But Bojan Bogdanovic is, so I added Bojan because what if he's more than just the three-point shooter? What if he adds the ball handling, the playmaking? What if he becomes a real fixture of your offense as a tertiary creator like Bojan has in the prime of his career? That's what I really think Dalton can really be for a team. Like this guy that's not only this movement shooter, but you can give it to him in offensive possessions and really initiate the offense and make plays for other guys while also leveraging the three-point shooting.
A guy that maybe you never want as your like number one option, like true blue number one, but a guy that can run your bench minutes for you, right? Yes. Or your star goes to sit down, cool. You're going to get some Bojan Bogdanovic minutes, and you're fine with that because he's more than capable of running an offense for stretches of a game.
Yes, exactly. Okay. All right, but so this is about game because I know the fifth guy is also white, so just be aware.
I like you having to put the disclaimers in there now.
I didn't even know.
You hit me with the first. You hit me with Sam Hauser. I was going to let you live. I was going to let you live with Sam Hauser, and then you hit me with Kyle Korver and Max Strus, and I was like, no way, man, no way. All right,
these guys are similar. This just is what it is. Okay, and the last guy.
There's one big common denominator behind but besides the shooting. All right, continue.
The last guy is Tyler Herro. I think Tyler Herro is a really good outcome for him. I think the way Tyler Herro handles dribble handoffs, he offers more than just shooting, right? And he's also a starter in this league, right? So these are these higher end outcomes. He offers more than just shooting, and he can get hot and give you 25, 30 in a spot game. But also, he can come off those dribble handoffs and make plays. He gets to his mid-range. He often finishes with floaters in the lane. So Dalton can do a lot of that stuff. He has some bounce in his game, man. He's more than just a movement shooter, and he has these other areas that he's able to leverage his shooting off of to create other baskets around the rim.
It's funny too when you say Tyler Herro, it almost makes me think I love that comp, not in a positive way, because it's almost like Tyler Herro does have a ceiling, right? Like that, like the fact that like Tyler Herro's would arguably best be served and was best served when he was in, coming off the bench in Miami, right? That felt like a better role for him. Whereas then you put him in the starting lineup and it's like, is his offense outweighing maybe some of his limitations defensively? Like, do you want to put the ball in his hands and let him kind of run the show the way that he has for a couple years in Miami, or are you better served going a different route? So I do think like maybe that's one of the drawbacks, right? The concerns is, how good does he become? Can you keep him in that role where he's just, that bench guy, or does he ever excel enough to where you're like, okay, him as a starter, it's cool, it works. Defensively, we're all cool with everything he does on that side of the floor. Offensively, he is who he is. Yeah, I like the Tyler Herro comp, but not necessarily in a good way. But on that note, we're curious, who would you be most interested in if the Rockets do trade down, further down to the lottery, or potentially even further back than that in this year's NBA draft? Which of these three prospects interests you the most? Is there a prospect we didn't talk about that you either A, want to hear about, or B, that you'd be more interested in than the three names that we hit on today's episode? Let us know in those YouTube comments. Madison, let everybody know where to track you down at.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MadmanLeaks. Come talk Rockets basketball and NBA draft.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review helps us out a ton. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.